Rainbow lowered her head as she was told what had happened on Discord and Luna's trip. Dark was the alicorn of death, much like Luna was the alicorn of the night, and Celestia was the day. He wasn't happy that the 5 young mares were to be forced into his domain, but they were bound to come soon anyway. There was one way that they would be able to heal, but he hadn't wanted it to come to that. So they called Crystal, who was Dark's sister and the alicorn of life. The 4 of them had conversed for quite some time, but Crystal told them rather plainly that they were close to death, and it was out of her jurisdiction. Dark had told them that the venom in their blood was from a creature thought long dead before Celestia and Luna's parents were born. It was slowly dissolving the flesh of the mares. After that, the pair asked them how they could fix it. But they didn't want to tell her. Only when she pried enough did they say it was a dangerous and cruel cure. They didn't want to use it unless she agreed, mainly because the immortals couldn't use it. Her voice was obvious, though, despite any consequences, and Discord pulled out a small vial of the glowing purple liquid inside. "This is it. When do you want to use it?" Rainbow looked up at him sadly, but with determination. "Tomorrow." Rainbow walked down the stairs, away from the 2 immortals. Discord looked towards Luna, who was watching as Rainbow had disappeared with sadness. She sighed and looked over to Discord. He saw tears forming in her eyes. He felt his water in his as well. He closed his eyes and allowed a tear to roll down his cheeks. "I wish there was another way, Luna." He felt Luna hug him. "So do I, Discord. So do I." They held their sorrowful embrace for several minutes, before pulling apart and walking downstairs. The light in the fort seemed dimmer, and Rainbow was talking in a quiet voice. The kingdom mourned for 2 years. But out of everything bad that had happened, good things came out of it. 2 young ponies unknown to the world were born, holding the powers of the lost king and queen. The filly, a Pegasus, was able to sense things from hundreds of miles away. From where she sat at her crib in Trottingham, she could hear and see the nobles in Canterlot. The colt, a unicorn, was able to survive almost any attack without injury. Discord smiled, realizing that Rainbow was telling them an age-old fairy tale. He glanced at Luna, who had settled into a pillow at the edge of the fort, and listened. Discord walked over and sat next to her, preparing for the long night. Rainbow woke up with something purple in her face. She raised her head and saw Scootaloo curled up next to her. She smiled and nuzzled the filly before standing up and carefully walking out the fort where they had fallen asleep. She walked out and looked around. She quietly laughed at Discord, who was curled around the sleeping form of Princess Luna. She shook her head and walked past them to the kitchen. She looked at the things that were available in the cabinets, and fairly soon she was cooking their breakfast on the stove. She heard a shuffle behind her and a confused voice. "Rainbow?" She turned around and saw Spike, staring at her like she was insane. "You're cooking?" She looked at his worried expression, confused why he was looking at her like that. "Yeah. Why?" The young dragon glanced around, as if looking for an escape. "Well, you're worried I'm going to burn the library down, aren't you?" Spike nodded and Rainbow chuckled. "Relax. I'm way better at cooking than Twilight is." She turned back to the food, expecting Spike to walk away. However, she heard no footsteps signaling the dragon's departure. She smiled slightly. "You can help me if you want." "Really?" Rainbow looked at him, smiling gently. "Of course. Come on." Spike ran up to her quickly and pulled up a stool so we could see what they were doing. "Let's get started then, shall we?" Discord woke up to the great smell, which didn't seem right considering he never had before. What was going on? He opened his eyes and saw Luna stretching. She saw him up and smiled sadly. He looked at her before standing up and stretching. "The others are in the kitchen." Discord nodded, and Luna walked away, presumably to the kitchen. But Discord looked around and sighed. He wasn't looking forward to the events of today. He walked into the kitchen and saw the others eating pancakes. He saw Rainbow placing the pancakes on a plate and pouring more batter into the pan. She saw him and smiled. "About time you got up." He smiled weakly. Rainbow rolled her eyes and handed him a plate with the pancakes and eggs. He wasn't very used to be given food, but he smiled. "Thanks." He took the plate and sat in a nearby chair. "Don't mention it." He watched her sadly as she got back to cooking. He quietly began eating. After he was done, he walked out of the kitchen and pulled out the small vial. He stared at it for a moment, both wanting to preserve it and smash it at the same time. His grip tightened and then he loosened it, sighing. Luna walked up next to him, laying a hoof on his shoulder. "Why, Luna? Why did it have to be this way?" He heard her sigh. "I don't know, Discord." Discord lowered his head. Luna turned away from him, straightening up and taking a few steps towards the kitchen. Discord looked over and saw Rainbow slowly walking out, carrying 3 fillies, one holding onto her leg, one laying on her back, and one clinging onto her neck. "Please, Rainbow!" "For the last time, girls, I can't." "Please!" Sweetabelle begged Rainbow from her position on the mare's leg, giving Rainbow the biggest puppy eyes. Discord stared, his heart melting but Rainbow only smiling slightly. "I have to go take care of a few things. And besides, I couldn't always make more later, right?" The fillies stared at her before unlatching themselves from her and forming a huddle, whispering as they paused for a moment, looking at Rainbow with a quizzical look before whispering again. Then they separated and stood in a straight line. "We agree with your offer. We shall return later." And then they slowly walked out of the library. But as soon as the door had shut, the fillies heard the fillies celebrating. Rainbow chuckled slightly and walked over to Luna in Discord. "Well, that was something." Discord looked at Rainbow, unsure how to react to the fillies. Rainbow and Luna looked at each other before laughing. "What?" They didn't answer and kept laughing. "What did I do?" They still just laughed. "Hello? Can you even hear me? Hello?" The laughter kept going, and Discord just walked out of the library due to frustration. Mares. He grumbled a bit before realizing that he was unconsciously heading toward Fluttershy's house. He froze and turned around, heading back towards the library. He tightened his grip around the vial he had forgotten was in his grasp. Rainbow and Luna met him before he had reached the library, and they both apologized for his lack of understanding fillies, which just made him annoyed. They walked a little, awkward silence falling between them. They didn't want to talk. They walked up to the hospital, pausing at the door. They stared at it before Rainbow walked, and sighed as she walked in. The other two following her in as they were greeted by the nurse at the front desk. "How may I help you today?" The nurse didn't even look up from the magazine as she addressed them. "I'm here to visit." "Go ahead, Miss Dash. But only 2 visiting at a time. One of your friends will have to wait." "Thank you," Rainbow stated, walking over towards the hallway, and Discord looked and saw Luna heading for the couch in the waiting room. "Go on with her. I'll wait till it's over." Discord nodded and floated over Rainbow. They quietly entered the room and looked at the 5 mares laying there. Discord looked from them to Rainbow, who had lowered her head. "Rainbow, give me the potion." "You have to..." She looked up to face him, tears streaming down her face. "I don't care, Discord. I failed to protect them now, and now I have to fix my mistake, no matter what happens to me." "It wasn't your fault." "Yes, it was. Please, Discord. I have to." He looked at her painfully before handing over the vial. As soon as Rainbow had it, Discord hugged her. "I'm sorry, Rainbow. You shouldn't have to face this. I will remember you." He let her go and walked away from her before turning around and walking out to where Luna was waiting. He sat down and looked at the floor. After a minute of some noise, he squeezed his eyes shut tears starting to fall. There was a scream, and the heart monitor going flat. "Help! Somebody help!" He hugged himself and curled into a ball. Discord? He looked up and over at Luna, who was staring at him sadly. "We have to calm them." She pointed towards the hall. Discord looked over and saw the doctors pulling a stretcher into another room. 5 mares riding tiredly after them, but they were stopped. "Get out of my way!" Discord got up and walked over as Applejack tried to fight to get her injured friend. Her other friends, save for Fluttershy, looked like they were going to join her. "Stop." They turned to look at him. Before they could say anything, he turned and looked to Luna, nodding. "One last goodbye, then." He walked over to her, and the others followed. He looked at the mares that had followed. Twilight, Applejack, Rarity, Fluttershy, and Pinkie Pie. He sighed and hugged them just as Luna cast her spell, drowning the area in white light. Discord opened his eyes, which were adjusting to the bright white landscape they were in. He stood up and looked around, looking down at the 5 mares that had joined he and Luna. He looked back around and saw Rainbow start to slowly appear. "Rainbow!" He held his claw to stop them. "Just wait." Rainbow looked around. "Hello? Where am I?" Discord watched her sadly. She couldn't see them. He looked over to one side and saw a black alicorn with a fiery red mane appear. Dark. His red eyes narrowed at Rainbow before softening. He looked past her as a white alicorn with a light green mane and aqua-colored eyes appeared as well. Crystal. She pushed her long mane out of the way of her eyes. She looked at her brother and nodded. He cleared his throat. "Miss Rainbow Dash." Rainbow looked over at him. "I am sorry that you have come here so early." Rainbow looked away and Crystal took a few steps forward. "Rainbow, what you did cannot be repaid." Rainbow stared at her before sighing. "What happens now?" "You pass on. What happens to you after that is up to you." Rainbow nodded before looking at the 2 alicorns. "And my friends, will they be okay? Will I be able to see them again?" The alicorn's gazes softened. "They'll be fine. And yes." He looked over to where Luna and Discord were standing and smiled sadly. "I believe you will." And that's our cue, Lulu. His claw's light lit up a brilliant yellow light, and Luna also brightened up her horn. Discord didn't take his eyes off of Rainbow, who covered her eyes as the bright light suddenly pierced anything keeping them hidden from her. As soon as they stopped, Rainbow looked up and her eyes widened. She took a single step forward before running up and hugging her friends. Discord took a step backwards, giving them space. The mares kept hugging for a while, before they took a few steps away from each other. "Rainbow, why?" Rainbow looked away, sadly. "I'm sorry. I just couldn't do nothing. Applejack shook her head. "None of that, Rainbow." The orange mare moved closer and hugged her friend. The others hugged her as well. He looked at Luna, who was talking with Dark and Crystal. Dark moved away from the 2 mares and closer to the group of young ponies. "I'm afraid it's time. You will see her again when your time comes." With one last hug, Rainbow walked away from her friends. She looked back at them and smiled. "Do me a favor, though, girls. Have a good life." With that, Rainbow disappeared and the group reappeared in the hospital waiting room. They looked around before a doctor walked over to them. "I'm sorry, but Rainbow Dash did not make it." The mares lowered their heads and cried quietly. Discord lowered his as well. So, that's how it ends.